Good morning, wives. Good morning. Y'all probably saying, Coach T, what in the crack-a-doodle-doo are you doing up this time of morning? Good morning. Y'all are catching Coach T True Marriage Chronicles. I wasn't planning on coming on. Good morning. I wasn't planning on coming on this morning. My son celebrated his I know, I wasn't planning on coming on this morning. I was in the shower, and the Lord normally gets me up between the hours of 3 and 4 anyways. Those are my hours on the wall. And we celebrated my son's 16th birthday on yesterday. And so I had came and crashed after that. Didn't even see no water. That's a shame, huh? So I got up to take a shower, and I was already taking some notes and stuff, writing and journaling. And when I was in the shower, I heard the Holy Spirit say, you don't need to wait until this week to do this. You need to go in and talk about this now and get this on out your system. All right, get this on out your system. Coach T have been battling different type of emotions. My husband has recently took a trip that I wasn't necessarily in agreement with. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But I want to first off start by saying, it is hard being a wife. It is hard being a wife. It is hard being a wife who is called by God. It is hard being a wife who is called by God. And it is even harder being a wife who not is only called by God, but is used by God. From a prophetic perspective, two things that you have to maintain, you just have to maintain, is your mental and your soul. You have to tend to those things. And I guess your mental falls underneath the soul. So you maintaining that soul care is extremely important for the prophetic or for any person. I don't want to just say for the prophetic, but I think sometimes for prophetic people, it's important because we sometimes see things ahead of time. We sometimes know things ahead of time. And that can be good and bad. It can be good and bad. Especially in the line of work that I do, right? Especially with what I do. One of the areas that I highlight in my business as a wife coach is the fivefold ministry. I keep that highlighted as a means to really help the wives that I work with to just gain a different perspective on this journey. And I just want to share a little bit from that for just a moment to kind of like get you to where I'm trying to go and get my thoughts together. So in the book of Ephesians, chapter 4, verses 12 to 13, it tells us that the purpose of the fivefold ministry is to prepare God's people for works of service. I know a lot of times wives are wondering, Coach T, why are you always talking about doing your work? Why you always talking about doing your work? And the reason why I highlight you doing your work and why it's so important is because you got other assignments. You have so many other assignments that's waiting for you, and that you have to push past this assignment of just, your marriage, because you have other stuff to do. And so the fivefold ministry prepares God's people for works of services. We were all created for a specific purpose. I know a lot of times being here in this natural world, it may look like we're supposed to just blend in with it, but we are actually supposed to stand out. We're actually supposed to stand out. And so one of the things that I struggle with, and I talk about this all the time with y'all still, I'm still running from God. Sometimes I'm still running from God because some of the things that he's asking, I'm not necessarily always in agreement with it. I recently shared how to balance, being a married person with the assignment of marriage as well. And sometimes being on this side of the field, a lot of times people are looking to wife coaches or coaches who have, succeeded in the area, or who have, been reconciled back to their husband, or who marriages have been restored. They're looking for that hope. They're looking for that like, if they did it, I can do it too. And yeah, you're supposed to. You have to understand that is part of this. That is part of this. Restoration, reconciliation, God promising you things, and God saying that, he's going to do a certain thing, and then he actually does it. But nobody prepares you for the work that goes along with it. Nobody prepares you for the work that goes along with it. Nobody prepares you and tell you, like, okay, once that happened, now you're going to be challenged. You're going to have all types of thorns on your side. You're going to deal with all different type of challenges in your own stuff. Even after reconciliation, even after, marriage restoration, even after all that stuff. And so I just wanted to just come on this morning and just share some of my notes. I woke up this morning singing that song, Your Grace and Mercy. Come on, Jesus. Brought me through. That's been on my spirit. I'm living this moment because of you. I want to thank you. Bless Jesus. And praise you too. Your grace and mercy. I can't sing, but I tries. But that's what I woke up singing this morning. Because I was in a wrecked place, y'all, over the weekend. I was in a wrecked place because I am a seer. And I am a dreamer. And God sometimes tell me stuff ahead of time, and I be like, what you telling me that for? So like I mentioned, my husband has recently took a trip that it wasn't the trip that I had a problem with, per se. I necessarily didn't have a problem with the trip, but it was more so of the surroundings, the ones that he may come in contact with, on the trip. And anytime you have dealt with some type of hardship in that marriage, and most of the time, a lot of times, when you're dealing with some type of addiction, I just want to just talk about the addiction part of, of this, or a person who may be married to a spouse that's dealing with addiction, or a spouse, who, have had, their battle, their own personal battle with addiction. That is hard. That is hard. That's not just abandonment. That's not just adultery. They have a saying, once a drunk, always a drunk. And you have to understand, maintaining that can be very, very difficult. It can be very, very difficult. What I have discovered is it is not my responsibility to maintain that. It is not my responsibility to maintain another person's condition. My job, my responsibility is only to keep that person lifted. My job, my responsibility is only to follow the instructions of the Lord. My job, my responsibility is to make sure that I'm maintaining myself. One of the things I always try to emphasize and express to my wife is you are not responsible for your husband's choices. At the end of the day, that is his choice. Good, bad, different, indifferent, whatever. At the end of the day, it's still his choice. It's still his choice. And it is not your job to maintain his choices. It's not your job to study his world. It's not your job to be all up in his business and trying to figure out, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Especially if they don't want you to. Especially if they don't want you in their stuff. They don't want you in their junk, So it's not your job, to maintain that. And so that is something I definitely have had to learn over the years. That is something I have definitely had to, learn how to, just keep my nose in my own business when it comes down to that. Because when you think about a person who has been, you've seen it. You've seen God, fully restore this person. You've seen God do some miraculous things. And then for that person to go back to something that God delivered them from, it's almost like, wait, what happened? What is this about? And so in church on Sunday, the pastor actually mentioned a Bible verse that, was a verse that was very, very, very familiar, and one that I just remember studying, during a very crucial time. And it comes from out of Matthew chapter 12, verses 43 to 45, which says, when the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places, seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. Then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits more evil than itself. And they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first. So also will it be with this evil generation. That Bible verse is one that, I studied that thing up and down, around and around, full circles, like Jesus. And then I remember when my husband got out the hospital, he was that. He was cleaned, swept away. You know, he was good. I seen it. But then I remember the day when I see him struggle to maintain that. I remember the day I seen him struggle to keep that going. I seen it. And again, sometimes being a seer it can be good. It can be good or bad, you know. Sometimes God will show me some things about my children, or He'll show me some things about my family, or, you know, He even showed me some things about, about myself, in different situations. And sometimes it's like, you don't want to deal with that. You don't really want to deal with that. And so I seen him struggle with that. And, over the years, since his return home, it's an up down. You get good, you get well, you get better, then you struggle with that, because at the end of the day, it really is a decision of theirs. It really is a decision. I don't ever want to come on this platform and make it seem as if once your husband returns back home, everything is going to be perfect. I don't want y'all to ever think that. That don't even go with marriage, because marriage is put in place for you to be a better version of you. Marriage has been put in place for you to grow, to mature, to learn, to seek after God. So I don't want people to ever think that, okay, once you are reconciled back to your spouse, or once everything is back, your husband finally comes back home, like I don't got to do no more work. Like, see, that's why I messed up the first time. And so, of course, after, going through different ups and downs and different hardships and different, around the blocks a few times, around the mountain, that's why I can talk about this like I do, because I've experienced. I experienced the highs and the lows, the in-betweens, the undergrounds, the upper levels, all that. I experienced those things. So I can talk about it so freely because I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. I know what this thing can look like. However, sometimes when you're dealing with a person who have struggled with addiction, that sometimes can be a merry-go-round. It can be an up down thing. But you wife, and I'm speaking to my wives who may be in marriages where addiction is the problem. You have to make a decision. And make sure that the person deliverance that you are in charge of, it's not your husband's. You're not in charge of his deliverance. You're not in charge of his choices. You're not in charge of his behavior. You're not in charge of his actions. And so many wives I see try to, they fighting it. They're trying to, no, this is going, I'm going to make this work. Or I'm going to make this be what I want it to be. Or I'm going to make this be, this. I'm going to make, and you are fighting. Is how the saying is true when they say, you're hitting a dead horse over the head. You are literally hitting a dead horse over the head. Demonicness, and that's the notes I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to get to those parts of the notes. When you struggle with addiction, when a person is struggling with addiction, you have to understand you are facing and encountering real life challenges. And you are dealing with demonic stuff, spiritual warfare at an all-time high. This is why a lot of times, many marriages, many wives, many, people make a decision like, this ain't gonna work. Like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not going to continue on this journey. I don't want to do this. If this is what it takes, if this is what, I have to continue to go through. But what happens? But what happens when God don't let you do that? What happened when God be like, nope, motion denied. What happened when God be like, nope, I don't know. I'm not releasing you. I'm not releasing you, because the one thing I have called you to in this portion of your marriage, I have called you to be a representative of me. I have called you to represent me. And it doesn't matter what it feel like. It doesn't matter what it seem like. It doesn't matter what it look like. I have already given you a word, and we're going to watch that word come to pass. I have already given you a thing, and we're going to watch that very thing come to fruition. Baby. That's not to sip your tea on right there. What happened when God don't give you the release? What happened when, what happens when God gives you everything that you asked for, everything that, he promised you and everything that he said was going to be, and something still happens and something still comes up and you still are faced with challenges and you still, got stuff. I had a dream. I can always tell when something is getting ready to go left in my own marriage relationship because I started dreaming. And I particularly don't dream about my husband. I normally don't. So when I dream about him, I know it be something. Now, back in the day, when I would dream about him and I had those dreams, boy, I would get up and go butt wild off, okay? Oh, I know. But see, I didn't know then. I wasn't wise then. I didn't know. I've later learned that when God give you dreams like that, or when God brings certain things like that to your attention, that's usually your time to get in position to pray. That's usually a time when you're supposed to, start praying, you start, going to warfare, you start, doing those things. One of the questions I've been asking God, and one of the questions I have asked God, along the way on the journey, has been, God, how to maintain all this and how long. My question had been like, how long did you want me to keep on maintaining this? Like how long we got to keep on going? How long we got to keep on, going this route? And God's so cool with it. He's so cool with it. Every time I would ask those questions, God will reference and send me back to, something else. Or he would send me back to something I told someone else. Or he'll send, put something on my path to, show me like, that ain't the main thing. That's not what's in problem. That's not what the problem is here. The problem is not that. You thinking the problem is that. That's not what the problem is. The problem is this. So when I was dreaming and having those dreams or whatever, about my husband or whatever, I just slowly started to like, ask some questions and stuff, try not to be too much, but he knows me just like I know him. He knows me. And so, he like, looking at me like, what is coming from? Like, what is coming from? I'm like, okay, all right, okay. So eventually it came up, about, this trip or whatever. And I'm just like, ooh, Jesus. You want to talk about a trigger for Coach T? This is one. This is one. And I think it's one because, like I said, I'm a seer. So I can see things. And I you can pray till your tongue fall out. You can, read every scripture in the book front to back, but if you do not have that relationship with God, and if you are not in fellowship with God on a regular, and if you are not maintaining that soul, and you're not maintaining your emotions, you're not maintaining that mind, you're not maintaining those things, let me tell you something. Ain't none of that stuff gonna work. Ain't none of that stuff going to work. And so my husband, he approaches me, different because he don't know if he gonna get, the prophetic part of me. He don't know he gonna get the old part of me, or he don't know what side he gonna get. So he yields when he comes to me, with certain things. And that's not me, trying to make it seem like, my husband this or whatever. I love that man. I love that. I absolutely love that man. So he yields it when he came and, he said what he had to say. And so I was like, okay, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I really don't have a choice in this or whatever. So as I'm saying, okay, I'm talking to God. As I'm listening to him, I'm praying in my head. As he's saying what he's saying, I'm like, okay, okay. Because you have two options on this journey, ma'am. You have two options. You can either do things your way or you can submit to the will of God. And so one of the things I have tried to do regularly is making sure that when my husband comes to me with something that I'm not necessarily in agreement with, I try to make sure that I go to God with it, because I want to make sure that I am operating not only as a woman of God, not only, as, being his wife and honoring him as, as his wife, but I also want to make sure I'm in the will of God, because if this stuff that he's saying ain't lining up with what God is saying, then I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it. But if he's saying something to me and then I go to God and God is almost like, my will, let my will be done. And that's what God told me this time. He was like, my will would be done in this. My will would be done in this. I don't want to hear that, Jesus. Do you know how far we have come? Do you know the stuff that we have dealt with? Do you know the different things that we have encountered? Your will be done. What does that mean? What does that mean? And so I say all that to say, sometimes, wives, sometimes we are trying to maintain someone else's deliverance. And at the end of the day, that's not your job. That is not your job. Your job is not to maintain your husband's deliverance. Your job is to maintain yours. Your job is to maintain yours. You have to make sure that you are on track. You have to make sure that you are in accord with God. You have to make sure that you are doing what God has called you to do. You have to maintain those things, because at the end of the day, that person is their own individual person. That person is their own individual person. If something gets out of line, something goes, wrong, something goes, different ways or whatever, God has to deal with that person. You are not responsible for that person. And so I end with saying this. My husband, he was, getting ready to let me know, like, all right, what was going on or whatever. And I'm like, okay, all right, and so I remember hearing God telling me, you got to put your pride to the side, put your emotions to the side, put your feelings to the side, put all that stuff to the side. And God always brings this back to me. You're going to do one of two ways. You're going to do this one of two ways. You're going to either trust me with your husband, or you're going to learn how to trust me with your husband. And being on this side as a wife coach who teaches other wives to do the same exact thing, sometimes when you have to walk back through, how they say, walking through the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Sometimes you have to walk back through that valley. It's almost like, I don't want to go back there. Like, I don't want to go back there. If I have to go back there, then I'd rather not do this. Like, I'd rather not do this. I am willing to just give this all over to you. And so I shared with y'all early last week, I think it was National Prayer, Day, and I was saying how I was battling something. I was battling something because, like I said, I see things, and I'm like, I don't like what I see. And it was almost as if, God was allowing those things to happen. It's like, this has nothing. He always reminds me that this has nothing to do with your husband. The challenges that come up, the different things that come up, those things don't have nothing to do with him, but it has everything to do with what I have called you to. It has everything to do with what I have placed you, the position I have placed you in. You have to understand that more than anything. And I'm telling y'all, this is Coach Tree, true transparency. It'd be rough. It'd be rough. Because a lot of times you think when you get on this side, you don't have to deal with that stuff anymore. You don't have to, you don't have to go back to that. You don't have to face those types of things. But sometimes those things have a way of kind of like popping up. Sometimes those things have a way of popping in. Sometimes things like, peekaboo, you thought I was gone. Here I am. And I'd be like, don't come for me. Don't come for me, because I have delivered some days. I have to tell myself to do the same stuff. I tell my wives, do not come for me. You might catch me on a delivered day. You might catch me on a day I'm kind of like walking the fence. Don't do that, okay? Oh, Jesus. He to help me. He has to help me, okay? And so I say all that to say, wife, you are not responsible. You are not responsible for maintaining your husband's deliverance. That's not your responsibility. You're only responsible for what God has instructed you to do. You're only responsible for doing what God has called you to do. You're only responsible for, and I tell my wife this all the time, you're only responsible for keeping that man lifted. Keeping that man lifted. One of the things I tell my wife is, keep him lifted. And then if God has something else that he wants you to pray about, he'll bring it to your attention. He'll put it on your mind. Because so many wives are like, they're trying to maintain their husbands. They're trying to study their husbands. It's like, if you maintaining your husband, how you doing anything else? how you doing anything else in the world if you just constantly maintaining him and maintaining that? Now, do you have a responsibility and an obligation? Absolutely. Especially if your husband and you are in the home and y'all are in that, in that space together. Absolutely. The Bible even talks about that. One of the reasons why, they talk about, women who are not married, why you have like a, more of a room is because you don't have the responsibility of worrying about another person, a spouse. But when you are a married woman, you do. But that does not mean you have to be, what they call it, micromanaging that man. He still is an individual. At the end of the day, when that time comes, you ain't going up to heaven with him. He gonna go his way and you gonna go your way. Okay. When that time comes, y'all all have to bow, you each have to bow down before God and give account for your life. So the only thing you're responsible for, the only thing that you are held accountable for is your part. It is not your job, wife. It is not your job to maintain your husband's deliverance. That is up to your husband and the Lord. That is up to the husband and the Lord. The only thing you are there for, and I can't emphasize this enough, as a representative of Christ. You are there as a representative of Christ. And since you are there as a representative of Christ, this is why it's so important for you to be in relationship with him. This is why it's so important for you to be in relationship with the Father. This is why it's so important for you to know his word. This is why it's so important for you to know what the Bible says about a thing, because you need to know how to maintain your own self. You need to know how to maintain yourself as a wife. You need to know how to maintain yourself as an individual. You need to know how to maintain yourself in other areas that he is calling you to. But it is not your job to micromanage that man and to be over that man and making sure like he's doing this or he's doing that or he ain't doing this. Oh, God, you better get him, God, today because he doing this and he doing that. Who got time for that? Who got time for that? And that'd be my thing with God. I'd be like, God, listen. Because I can still do your work. And, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't got to even really do this. If you decide, I can still do what it is you called me to do. And God has to remind me, this is not what's on the line here. So many wives think that the issue is their husband. So many wives think that the issue is their marriage. And I try to emphasize it to you so many times. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is not. And so you need to heal. You need to do your work, because there is something attached to why God has you in this place. There is something attached that why God wants you in this place, and why the enemy is fighting you so hard, and why the enemy is sending so many distractions, and why the enemy is using all types of tactics and schemes and all types of devices and agendas to try to tear that down. You send that stuff back to the pits of hell. You say it would not be so. You're going to believe the report of the Lord. If God be for you, who can be against you? If God called you to this, regardless of what you may face, regardless of what you may go through, if God called you through this, called you to this, he's going to bring you through it. And he's going to bring you through it because he handpicked you for the job. You think God just called you to this place just to leave you out there? You think God called you to this place just for you to just kind of like just be dangling out here like, God, all right, I'm out here on a ledge, like, come and get me. No, he called you to this because he know you're the one who can get the job done. And if God has that kind of confidence in you, wife, why won't you have that kind of confidence in yourself? If God has that kind of faith in you, why can't you put that same faith back into him? God said, I called you. I handpicked you for the job because you're the one who's going to be able to do the job. You're the one for the job. You're the one who's going to be able to see these things come to pass and come to fruition. Wife, it is not your responsibility to maintain your husband's deliverance. It's your responsibility to maintain yours. All right. And so in order for you to maintain your deliverance, you got to do your work. You got to do your work. You got to heal. You got to do your work. Listen, I be joking, but I be serious sometimes. I'm not playing. I'm not playing. This is a daily dying to the flesh. Okay, this is a daily thing. It's like taking a daily dose of whatever you got to take a daily dose of to get through that. Listen, my natural personality goes against all this. And my husband, he's a very, very, he's a very, very like, he has a very strong demeanor, personality as well. Very strong, but you get us together. It's like, we have to surrender to God at the end of the day. And so when I see him in that place, when I see him in that yielding place, I then recognize, like, Tanika, take it down. Cause it's taking him a whole lot for him to even come to you and say this, or, take it down. Cause it's taking him a whole lot for him to even, get to this place. And he's not doing that in his own, that's the Lord, working through him or whatever. Because, you still battle with certain things as you go along, you have to be willing to say, I refuse to stay in this place. I refuse to keep going to this spot. I refuse to, keep doing this. You're only responsible for you. Why? You're only responsible for your part. You're only responsible for your choices. You're only responsible for your behavior, for your action. God is going to hold you accountable for the parts that you play in it. And this is why I always try to tell wives, come on, let's do your work. Come on, let's heal. Come on, let's make sure that you are okay, because you don't have anything that when it comes down to your husband, that ain't on you. That ain't on you. You are there as a representative of Christ. And as long as you're doing that part well, everything else has to fall in place or move out the way. Everything has to fall in place or move out the way. Let me tell you this before I let you go. Please understand, wife. I say this all the time as well. Just when your husband come home and you think, okay, I got my husband home, my husband's back home, this and that and the other, you have to maintain that. How do you think you maintain that? You don't maintain that by, I'm going to put on my red dress. I'm going to put my high heels. I'm going to, watch this, this show and learn how to, make my booty bounce like this. That ain't what's going to maintain it. That ain't what's going to maintain it. You maintain it by maintaining you. You maintain it by making sure that you are in right place with God. You are maintaining it, making sure that you are in, because as long as you right, as long as you in the will of God, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it does not matter what he has going on. As long as you are in place, as long as you're doing what God's called you to do, it does not matter what he got going on, because one or two things are going to happen. God going to walk him down and deal with him accordingly, or he going to release you. And so since he has not released you yet, guess what? Keep maintaining you. Keep doing your part. You are not responsible for maintaining your husband's deliverance. You're responsible for maintaining yours. All right? You're responsible for maintaining yours. So I just want to share that with y'all. That's some real Coach T Chronicles right there. Like, for real. Yeah, it's work. It's work on this side. It's work on the side. I think I heard a message recently from a young man who said, people think, once you get on God's team, like, all right, I done made it. Like, I finally have arrived. Like, you made it and you're going to be all right and you're going to be good, but you're going to still go through some stuff. You're going to still go through some stuff. And this is why for ones that, they want, I'm going to be a wife coach too. I'm going to be a wife coach. I'm like, really? You want to, your marriage is restored and your husband back home and you want to go out there, you want to go in that danger zone? Like, really? You better tread lightly. You better tread lightly, because you're going to be faced with different challenges and different things that's going to come up, that's going to challenge you, that's going to make you be like, At the sign of you seeing something that don't look right, you, I ain't doing this. I ain't doing God, come get him. At the sign of seeing something going wrong, you ready to throw in the towel. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody going down that road again. Ain't nobody can deal with that kind of pain over again. Come and get this. Come and get this. And you have to understand, why at the end of the day, God's will is going to be done. And if God has called you to something, if God has said, look, I'm going to use you for this, ain't nothing going to get in the way of that. I'm telling you right now today, it ain't nothing going to get in the way of what God is trying to do in your life. If God has called you to something, if God has placed you, here for a specific reason, best believe, hell or high water, your husband or nobody else is going to stand in the way of that. God will get the glory out of this. He will get the glory out of this. All right. And so on that note, I want to just remind you, this weekend is the last weekend for the wives who are interested in, jumpstarting their coaching to consulting, small business. You're ready to, dive into entrepreneurship. I keep on saying that word wrong. Entrepreneurship. You ready to dive into that and see about that? This is the last weekend for you to sign up. This is the last week for you to sign up for your free business consultation. We are starting that cohort in January the 3rd. But this is the last weekend because we have to order the things and, get everything in place. So if you're interested in that, I want to encourage you to sign up for that. But for my wives who would say, you know what? I got to maintain me. Who said that? That was Tarji. I got to see about me. I got to see about me. If you're ready to see about you, wife, listen. I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to sign up for her Bonus Boost wife consultation. This is something that you need to do. You got to maintain yourself. Why? Please don't believe the hype. Don't believe the lie. Don't believe the stories. Don't believe, and I say this, don't believe. What I'm saying is everybody's situation and story is different. Everybody's situation and story is different. And so your story may not necessarily be what somebody else's story is. That does not make that person's story better than your story, or, this person's story less than that person's story. No, God has his own way of how he reconciles and how he brings things together and how he brings people, back together. But it's for his glory. It's for his plan. It's for his purpose. That's why I tell you, get out of your own way when you talk about, my husband and my marriage. This is not about that. God, at the end of the day, has placed you in this place for a specific reason. And a lot of times that reason is because he's trying to do something in you. All right. He's trying to do something in you. So don't you miss out what God is trying to do in you. Don't you miss the blessing. Don't you miss the lesson. Don't you miss what God is trying to get to you because you so caught up in it. You just want your husband back. The goal to this, wife, and if somebody's telling you something different, they telling you wrong. The goal to this is not just to get your husband back. The goal to this is to get your husband back and then see what the assignment is that God has for you and your husband. What is that God wants to bring forth out of your marriage? It's not just my husband coming back home, but you don't want your husband to come back home and you not in a good place. You don't want your husband to come back home and you be like, at the sound. It took Coach T a long time to get to this place. At the sound of something like it's going to go left, you about to go completely off. You don't want to be at that place. You don't want to be at that place. So this is why it's important for you to maintain yourself, and it's important for you to do your work. So on that note, if you're ready to start your curriculum, her bonus solution, you're ready to do your inner work, I want to encourage you, wife. I want to encourage you to sign up. www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. Listen, Coach T is transparent. I am transparent. And I tell y'all the realness of real because I don't want you to ever think, once my husband get home, I have arrived. You have not arrived. You have just walked in. You have not arrived. You have only just walked in, and then you have a new set of instructions and a new set of ways. But you have to get delivered. You have to get developed from where you are now. You can't take this person, the person that you are now, into that next place. You have to get better. And that's why I think I made a video about that on yesterday and said, healing is not optional. It's like if you don't heal, if you don't get to that better place, then you stay stuck in that same spot, and you never grow and get to the next place that you're supposed to be on. God don't want you in this same spot, right? He don't want you to sit here maintaining this. He wants you to get to the next level because he have other stuff for you to do. This is why I'm always emphasizing y'all got work to do. Yes, you got to do your work, but after you do your work, you got to do God's work, because God is not just calling you to the assignment of marriage. He's calling you to the assignment of his people. He's in his will for none of us to perish. Your husband, your cousin, them, your uncles, them, your sister, them, your brother, them, for none of us to perish, for none of us. But you got to do your part first. You got to do your work first. And so I want to encourage you, wife. I want to encourage you. Sign up today for your wife consultation. Yes, let's talk about your pain. Yes, let's talk about the ugly. Let's talk about the marriage injury. Let's talk about all the stuff he did. And then let's get you healed. let's get past that part and get you healed so we can get you to the next place on this journey. I am a witness. I am a witness. God is faithful. He will do everything that he said he's going to do. He will. He going to do those things. I've seen it. I witnessed it. I've experienced it. He will do those things. He will bring your husband back home. He will get that marriage back into a healthy place. He will do those things. But guess what? It does not mean you're not going to be challenged anymore. It does not mean that you're not going to still have to face different challenges. It does not mean that you're still not going to have to go through certain things. And so because you are going to have to still deal with some of those things, you are always developing. You are always growing. You're always learning. Get out of first place. You need to go to the second place, and the third place, and the fourth place. The whole goal to this is to grow, is to move. You are forever a student in Christ. You are forever, doing your work. But you got to start somewhere, all right? You got to start somewhere. And so allow a coach, a wife coach who has walked through this, who sometimes still get little, woohoo, like little sign, like little reminder, like, girl, don't get too high on your horse that you forget where you came from, because we can bring this thing all the way back around. The moment I start thinking that, oh, I have arrived, I got my man back and everything is good, baby, on this side. Yes, I went through that and now we here. And God be like, okay, all right, we going there. We going there. Don't get so high on your high horse and think that this thing cannot go back or go a different route. God has a way of keeping us humble on this journey. I'm telling you. You got to do your work. You got to do your work, because sometimes that can throw you for a loop. It can throw you for a loop. And so you have to be able to maintain that. You're not in the business of maintaining your husband's deliverance. You are in the business of maintaining yours, because God is going to always place you in a position where you're going to be dependent on him. All right. And so on that note, wife, I want to encourage you, sign up today for your consultation, www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. Listen. Y'all go and have an awesome Self-Care Tuesday. And Coach C will see y'all on the other side. All right? Blessings.